Good evening. Welcome to City Council meeting for August 10th, 2021. We are now having in-person meetings with regard to CDC guidelines. We are requiring everyone to be masked. With that, items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. 2 or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related discussion may be delayed at any time. With that, I will call the meeting to order, and we will begin with our invocation. Pastor Ed Bruning, please stand.
Loving God, you created the heavens and the earth and all living things. You placed our founding members in a garden in which there was no fear and no disease. How is it that we allowed such a great gift to be wasted? That we have turned now and become so often like the person who sees his gas gauge is empty and speeds up in order to get to safety. We act more counterintuitive than self-correcting. And so often, Lord, we are more concerned about ourselves than about others. You said that if we desire wisdom, we might ask you, and that you will be glad to give us wisdom. You said that you've made us in your image with strength and honor and glory and power. So often we tell ourselves that we are weak, that we have allowed our glory to be dissipated, and we have become dust. And we look around and we ask why. Why is it like this? How is it that it could be when it had such a fine beginning? But you have never given up on us. Though we have relied upon ourselves more often than we should, you have never failed to keep your promises, nor withdrawn them from our availability. We ask you tonight, as we all meet here together, that we would have strength with wisdom, that we would have care for ourselves and for one another with integrity. We ask, Lord, that we would acknowledge those things that we don't know, and that we would seek to know those things that we should. And those things that we think we do, that we would constantly examine ourselves to find the truth and to stay in that way, that truth, that life. Bless the meeting here tonight, Lord, in every decision that is made, in every purpose that is presented, in every hope that shall be fulfilled. For you are a giver of good and perfect gifts, and you have never changed from that first day in the garden, that you want us to have life now in abundance and eternally. We thank and we praise you. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, Pastor Bruning, thank you for your very timely invocation there. Appreciate that very much. Public announcements, Ms. Mannanen.
Hello, Angela Mannanen, Budget Manager. So hopefully you all know that finance is constantly striving to be more transparent. One thing we do is annually we create the executive summaries, which have lots of information, and hopefully they're in an easy to read format. We also do the 5-year capital improvement plan. We recently created the swimming pool recreation project financing plan. We have a turning land into revenues, understanding solar lease revenues, which is fascinating reading. And also our vehicle equipment replacement program brochure. So all of these are available on the website, on the Boulder City website. And so as we're constantly trying to improve our transparency, on the dais you'll see a budget book. So in efforts to make the budget process more transparent and user-friendly, we have created the fiscal year 22 budget book. It has all the department's information on top and also statistics, and it's just easier to read than our typical, when we go into the budget, we have the Excel documents, and there's not, although all the information's there, the figures are there, there's no detail. So we're hoping with this budget book, it provides some of the detail and some of the answers to questions people have. So we're very proud of it. Brock Armentrout had a big part in creating it. As we did not have software this year to make it, he made it with Creative Cloud. We're gonna submit it to the GFOA for, and this is what the budget book looks like. It's very lots and lots of information. Lots of pictures though. We're gonna submit it to the GFOA hoping to get an award. We also purchased software this year called ClearGov that is for a digital budget book, and so hopefully using that software we can produce the fiscal year 23 budget book much quicker. And our goal is actually to use the during fiscal year 23 to use the budget book in presenting the budget rather than using the Excel documents to hopefully be more transparent and user-friendly. And again, this is available on the Boulder City website on the finance page under publications. As are all the other publications. And if you have any questions or comments or any feedback on any of these documents, please email finance@bcnv.org. It's finance@bcnv.org. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and again, thank you for all the efforts in putting the additional information together.
Thanks.
I want to point out before we move any further that council chambers have been redone while we were on a little bit of a break. I want to thank all of the city employees that put in so much work on this. I was up here this afternoon and they were confirming that everything was going to work, and so far so good, and it looks great. We will now move to the administration of oath to office for Mr. Tedder, our new city manager. Welcome, sir. Or do we want to do the other one first, Ms. McKay? Okay.
Turn it on. It is. Yeah. Okay. If you would just raise your right hand. Okay. Do you, Taylor Tedder, solemnly swear that you will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada against all enemies, whether domestic or foreign, and that you will bear true faith, allegiance, and loyalty to the same, any ordinance, resolution, or law of any state notwithstanding, and that you will perform well and faithfully all the duties of city manager of Boulder City, Nevada, on which you are about to enter, so help you God, under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Thank you. Welcome. Congratulations, and you'll just need to sign the oath here.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you so much. Today marks almost the end of my second day, and I must say that I have thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it so far. The staff has been so helpful, welcoming me and helping me find everything that I need. So I really look forward to working with all of you, and really happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, we very much look forward to your service here, new perspectives on things. Again, I think things are going to go well, and you'll find Boulder City to be a very special place. Now we have swearing in of some new marshals. And I know Chief Shea is going to make them actually say all of that. So.
I will. We do it the old-fashioned way. I just want to introduce Mr. James Carpenter and Andrew Fischette. I recognize Mr. Carpenter. He was a court-martial here some years ago. He's also a well-known, well-respected arson investigator around the valley, so we're really happy to have him to help us do those things. And Mr. Fischette, he came to us kind of a circular route. He was with Metro for several years, then went to Clark County Fire where he is now, and I believe he's in the process of doing arson, getting to be an arson investigator. And this will allow him to maintain his post certificate, which he needs to do that. So we make out and the county makes out. Where's copies? Just go ahead and okay. See if I can do this. Raise your right hand, please. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, James Garcia,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States
the Constitution and government of the United States,
and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada
the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada,
against all enemies, whether domestic or foreign,
against all enemies, domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and will bear true faith,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
any ordinance, resolution, or law
any ordinance, resolution, or law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state notwithstanding,
and that I will perform well and faithfully
and that I will perform well and faithfully
all the duties of the office of City Marshal
all the duties of the office of City Marshal
for the city of Boulder City, Nevada,
in the city of Boulder City, Nevada,
on which I'm about to enter.
which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Gentlemen, congratulations. I'm sure with your experience and background, you're going to be real assets to this community. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
All right, that brings us to our initial public comment period. Comment during the initial comment period is limited to matters for action on the agenda. Each person wishing to speak during public comment will have up to 5 minutes. And as always, we ask people to be civil and concise in their comments. Is there anyone here that would like to speak during public comment? Ms. DeShane?
Seems strange to see all of you in person as opposed to the little screen. My name is Judy DeShane, and I have comments on some of the agenda items this evening. I did send you guys emails, and I apologize to Mr. Fox and Ms. Jorgensen. I didn't sign my name and put a phone number at the bottom. At the mayor and Claudia know who I am, but you guys wouldn't have, so I apologize. I just forgot to do it this time. So, my first comment is on item 6, and this is just something that struck me as strange in the classification and compensation area. For a city of our size, we have a total of 310 employees between full-time and part-time, and 151 different classifications seems a little like overkill to me. That's all. And the other, I saw there were handouts out there that kind of answered my other things as to what cities were compared to and our compensation philosophy, but I am interested in hearing what you guys have to say about it this evening. Item 8, and I'm assuming that also applies to item 14, number C. It has to do with the commission or committee that apparently was formed 10 or 12 years ago never was actually staffed, and nothing's been done with it. So if I understood the packet correctly, this is getting rid of that board. Is that, so I'm assuming that's correct from what I read. Item 9, the item on secondhand stores and junk dealers. I really don't want to see this bill only get introduced and then wind up on a consent agenda in September. I want to see some discussion on it and explanation. Some of the things in there did not make a lot of sense to me. Part of it was that the officer, in other words, whoever the city employee is that's designated the officer, can go into a place of business and arbitrarily decide they aren't doing something correctly and pull the license. That is not fair. There's nothing in this ruling about the person being able to appeal or any kind of a second opinion on it. And let's face it, we all have prejudices, and we can all, some people we like, some people we don't, irregardless of our reasons. So it is not right to have only one person decide who can do business and who can't, and who is the licensed. And then I also like an explanation about the difference in the holding period. Some things are 3, some are 15, some are 30 days. So, I'd like an explanation how they decided how long you have to hold things, because most of our people have limited storage. We have many small shops. And so having to store something and have it readily available so it can be inspected or seen or whatever, I don't know how you expect a small business to do something like that. Then my last one is item 12, the opioid litigation. I can never pronounce that right, sorry. But I don't suppose it really matters which way you guys go on it tonight, but what I would like to see is this to come back on a future agenda item, maybe September or October. I want to know why this was actually, this attorney group was hired 2.5 years ago by the prior city manager. The city attorney would have known about it, and I think the city mayor at that time, Mayor Woodbury, would have known about it, being that a firm that he's connected to was the one that is representing us in this, in getting this stuff together, and will be paid by it. So it would seem like there was some conflict of interest, and the fact that nobody said a word to the community. And I thank our current city attorney for recognizing the fault and bringing it forward. But I would like to see us do something about it. And the answers for the citizens, that we have a right to know when this kind of stuff goes on and how these people are chosen. And the fact that supposedly nobody knew jack about it. That's not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in chambers that would like to speak during public comment? All right, we are continuing to accept public comment via telephone. Anyone wishing to speak during the public comment period, the phone number to call is 702-589-9629. Again, you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak on an item on the agenda. That phone number again, 702-589-9629. This is the initial public comment period. Anyone wishing to call, the phone number is 702-589-9629. All right, hearing no others, we will close the initial public comment period. Move to approval of the regular agenda. Any changes, Madam City Clerk?
No changes.
Madam City Attorney?
No changes.
And Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
Thank you. Council members, any changes for the regular agenda?
No changes.
No changes.
No changes.
All right, anyone wishing to make a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
The regular agenda?
Regular agenda. Yeah.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move to approval of the consent agenda. Again, Madam City Clerk, any changes?
No changes. I just want to point out there are some corrected minutes before you, and they will be placed in the packet on the website within 24 hours.
Thank you. Madam City Attorney
No changes.
and Mr. City Manager
No other changes.
and council members, any changes for the consent agenda?
No changes. No changes.
All right, anyone wishing to make a motion with the changes to the minutes that Madam City Clerk is advised of?
I would like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda with the changes to the minutes.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we will move then to item number 6, matters pertaining to the city classification and compensation study. Mr. Bolt?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Bryce Bull, Administrative Services Director. We have with us this evening Dr. Linda Riccio of Evergreen Solutions. They're the consulting firm conducting the city's classification and compensation study. Dr. Linda will be presenting the classification and compensation study plan and be seeking City Council direction regarding comparable peer entities and the city's compensation philosophy. And I'll turn it over to the doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Good evening, Mayor McManus, members of the City Council. I'm Linda Riccio. I'm president of Evergreen Solutions, and it's a pleasure to be here today to give you an initial progress report as to where we are in conducting your pay, compensation, and benefits study. And you'll have the PowerPoint in front of you as we go along here. In terms of what I'd like to talk about, I'd like to talk to you about how we started this study initiation, our assessment of your current conditions for pay and classification, the use of a job assessment tool by Evergreen, salary and benefit surveys, then a dialogue on developing your compensation philosophy, and finally we'll conclude with next steps. The study began in June 2021. At that time, we asked HR to provide entities to Evergreen, such as employee data, salary schedules, job descriptions, organizational charts, union contracts, personnel policies, and procedures. I'll be drinking quite a bit. Something's in the air out here, and I have allergies, and they're bad in Florida. But
It's
there are
the
a lot.
lack of water in the air that gets
Whatever it is, I got it. We had a kickoff meeting on June 3rd, and then we planned for a series of interviews and focus groups with my colleague Gary Meir and I have been doing yesterday and today. We've interviewed or had a group discussion with over 70 employees over the past couple of days. Why? Because we wanted to get broad-based employee input on this study. In terms of the current conditions, looking through your pay plans and doing an analysis, 310 employees, there are 174 full-time, 136 part-time, and we all realize this is a floating number. I'm sure this number has changed since we did this assessment a month ago. You have 146 classification titles. At that point, there was 26 vacant in those titles. You have 4 pay plans. Union, in the union pay plan, there are steps, usually 4 or 5 steps. Hourly non-represented, 6 steps, and they consist of hourly pay. Administrative, no steps. No ranges, but flat salaries for administrators. And then you have a large group of part-time employees. Some classifications have min-max, and they are, again, recognized by hourly pay. So we will, in our final report, have a comprehensive chapter on the current situation. Next, the job assessment tool. Generally, we do this after coming on site, but since there wasn't a council meeting and I wasn't able to present, we did it first. What is the job assessment tool? The job assessment tool used by Evergreen provides data on the roles and responsibilities by classification. All employees were asked to complete the JAT. And then we produce classification scores based on 5 factors: leadership, working conditions, complexity, decision-making, and relationships. We have multiple verification steps. First, we get the employee's input. Then we get the supervisor of that employee to review, to agree or disagree with what the employee said. Then there was a review and scoring by Evergreen, and our next step will have it reviewed by HR staff. That'll take place next week. So we're well in the way for this internal assessment. And combined with market survey data, this allows for the calculation of market values. And the final thing in this study is the update your job descriptions. I've never presented with a mask before. This is very interesting. All right, let's see. Let's talk about the job assessment tool in terms of specifics. We launched it on June 14th. We closed on July 16th. Good response. We had 209 out of 311 employees complete the JAT. We really pushed hard for this through your HR department. Why? Because it's important that we know, especially about the unique positions within this city. If you're a police officer within the city, we had to get a broad spectrum, but we didn't have to hear from every police officer. But if you're the director of communications, there's only one of you, so we had to have you complete it. So we did push. We had 148 of these job assessment tools were reviewed by supervisors, and then we had 6 completions of a tool we call the management issues tool. That's the tool supervisors can say to Evergreen, hey, I've got some issues with this particular classification. I think this employee is too low, too high, or whatever. It's just the supervisor's input back to us in terms of any action they'd like us to take. And of course, just because the supervisor says, they want the person promoted and given $20,000 raise does not mean that's what Evergreen will do. It provides a flag to say there's an issue there according to the supervisor. All right. Where are we now? We've done our internal analysis, concluding today with talking to employees. Then we want to go to market. And this is one of 2 discussions I'd like to have with council, but I'd like to wait until the end of the presentation, then engage in conversation, if that's okay with you all. But what I'm going to be asking you is, who are we going to compare you to? You are so unique. Everybody that I met with said, we are so unique. Nobody in the world is like us. So how are we going to go external? We're going to talk about that. Where do you compete for high quality staff? Where do you take them from? Where are you losing employees to? And you do have a pretty stable employee group. I realize that. You're not losing a lot of employees. But we want to go out to about 20 other communities, whether they be cities, colleges, and universities, whether they be counties, again, to get some comparable data. We also are going to be going external on a benefit survey. And I will tell you, based on the input from the 70 employees we heard the past couple of days, you have a great benefits program. And the city is to be applauded for that. Everybody is happy, most everyone is happy with their health insurance, vision, dental, retirement program, the fact that you're paying 100% of the state retirement, and employees are only paying that percentage increase if there is any. Sick annual leave, pretty traditional programs. We're going to look at your 401k, 457, any type of wellness program, gym memberships, training, whether any training costs are, that's a benefit if training costs are encumbered. So this survey will be going out at the same time as the salary survey to the same jurisdictions as the salary survey. The last thing I'm going to try to have an open discussion on this evening is your compensation philosophy. When we come back and do that, I'm going to be asking questions like, what market position does this city want to be when compared to its peers? You want to be at the top? You want to be at 75% of the salaries across peers? You want to be below 50? We're going to talk about that because your compensation philosophy is going to dictate some of the recommendations in this study. Does your organization plan to make any changes to your total compensation, all the benefits? I suspect the answer to that is no right now, but let me hear it. What salary structure or design does the organization want to administer? Right now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you have a step plan, a limited step plan. For administrators, you have flat salary. Do you like that dichotomy? And I do realize you're a unionized city, and part of that is dictated by the union, but how does this council feel about that? And then what type of reward system? There are several city councils, county commissions feel that there needs to be a merit-based system. You don't really have a merit-based system as it relates to salary increases. And if that's your compensation philosophy, so be it. So I'm going to come back and address some of those questions. But let me just, the last slide before we go into the questions is, again, we're going to select organizations to go external to and benchmark positions. I said we were going out to about 20 other jurisdictions, and we proposed going on 70 different classifications. I said you had 147, so we're going to go out to about half of your classifications, okay, to ask what others are paying them. We're going to then complete the salary and benefits surveys. We're going to prepare a draft and final report. And then most importantly, at the end, we're going to revise your job descriptions based on what we found in the internal and external analysis. Okay? If I could, I'd like to go back to what are those organizations? How do you feel? Where do you think we should, are there some, we've got to go here, or this study would be invalid?
Any responses? I'll give you my thoughts on it. I mean, you mentioned it at the outset that we're unique. That's always great to believe that we're unique, but of course we're not. But we certainly have some qualities here that are different than you would find in many places. We're a small community with a conservative growth policy. And yet we're next door to one of the largest and fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. So that presents a problem, I believe, for us, because obviously that's an ever increasing labor pool that's needed there. And yet we remain relatively small, and our population just does not increase all that much. So I understand that we are in a job market in a metropolitan area, even though we are classified as a rural community. As far as where we would fall, I don't think we need to be at the very top. I'm certainly happy that we do have such an excellent benefit program, and I think that that sometimes is overlooked when people talk about salaries. and ignore or don't consider that benefit package, because that benefit package is not available at many private companies and even other governmental entities. So I'm not sure how you're going to be able to take that into consideration, but we can't just say, well, this job pays this much for the city of Las Vegas or the city of Henderson, because we need to understand what the differences in their benefit packages are. So I think that's going to be something that, how you want to express that or evaluate that, but I think that's going to be a substantial part of this study to allow us to make some decisions on how we go forward on it. There are many other small communities in Nevada, and I know that there are different tables out there where communities are rated for cost of living, things like housing and all of that. But I do think we need to look at some of the small communities around the state and determine what it is they're doing as far as the classification types that they have. It's already been pointed out, we appear to have one classification for every 2 employees we have. That seems too much. So I don't know how we got there, but we are there, and somehow I think we're going to need to pare that down somewhat. Management compensation, it's a belief of mine from having worked in private industry. Management compensation is generally considered apart from other employees, and that is because of the fact that, otherwise you may have an upward pull from management regarding that salary structure. I'm also a believer in merit pay. We are a mostly unionized workforce here. That's going to be a negotiation with the unions, and whether we get into different classifications within a certain employee group, a bonus program, something of that nature. There are certainly downsides to merit considerations. Good employees sometimes don't get recognized by their management for the work that they do, and sometimes employees who may not be the best in the group are given those rewards while others are not. But I still think that merit pay has significant use within an employee workforce. And with regard to the first part then of that, that would be my comments on it. Again, I do understand when we say, well, let's look at the pay in some of the northern Nevada communities, and people are going to say, well, that's unrealistic because we're competing against the Las Vegas metropolitan area. Well, that is a dichotomy. There's no question about that. So I would look to you for your advice on how we approach something like that. You mentioned earlier that the tenure of our employees tends to be longer. I think that might have a lot to do with the benefit package that's available to employees. And I think that's very desirable, having employees for long-term. Experience is very valuable, and having employees that are here for a long period of time, I think, helps the city a great deal.
Thank you. Okay.
Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was interesting. I was looking at some random comparisons of communities in Nevada and outside of Nevada, and criteria that just isn't about, what do we pay people versus what do others pay people. But issues like affordability.
Right.
I looked at the top 10 of most affordable cities to live in Nevada, and that includes Carlin and Ely and West Wendover and Winnemucca and Mesquite and Fernley. And it's looking at what salaries attract a workforce here. The first question, though, I had was, there was a comment on how many classifications. Is this an abnormal number of classifications that we have compared to, say, another municipality that
Usually
has?
they're less, yes, based on our experience in other cities and counties for the number of employees that you have. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. That's the analysis that that's the next phase of the study, to look at that.
Okay, and then the other thing I was looking at is location in terms of how far we are from the closest large community, large city. We're about 30 miles. And even though we are considered rural, having lived in other communities, it's almost like we're closer to a suburb. Yes, we are our own thing. We have our growth ordinance and so on. But when major metropolitan areas draw from a suburb, and they go out 30 miles, what happens when you go out 90 miles? What happens when you go out to Mesquite? Are you going to be drawing from the same labor force as that?
Yeah.
So I don't think necessarily just in Nevada, but any other cities where there is a community that far away. And what are you comparing it to? But then going out again another, 60 miles and say.
Right. I think your point is well taken. I think perhaps we need to go beyond Nevada to find our 20. Because, and again, I think your distinction is important. A large city with close by a large city within 30 miles, but having feeding into that city. And that's, I think, what we're going to be looking for. Maybe in Arizona, California, and we welcome any input that anybody would have on that. And then with regard to total compensation, that's critical. And I think that's why the RFP that we responded to, not everyone wants to look at total compensation when they do this study. They think salaries are sufficient. But I applaud you for asking for total compensation, which includes benefits. Because the percentage that you're given on benefits in this community is high. And employees need to appreciate that and understand what that means. And, it is higher than many other communities and many other cities that we look at. And one thing I also want to say to the mayor's comment, we will be adjusting for cost of living. So if we go to a city in California, we will compare their cost of living to your cost of living, and everyone will be adjusted with cost of living when we do comparisons.
I was thinking in terms of percentage, what of a community 30 miles out, what percentage of their salaries is it related to the major metropolitan area nearby? Because certainly if you go out 30 miles from Los Angeles or San Francisco, or Sacramento, you're going to certainly have a lot different salary.
You might be in the ocean.
You could be in the ocean. Right, but in terms of percentages as opposed to.
And that all has to be analyzed.
Absolute numbers, yeah.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Also, in looking at this, I did feel unique in that we do have Las Vegas right there, and it is so accessible, and it did ask, where do we compete for high quality staff, and people are willing to live here because they love the feel of the small city, but commute over because it's an easy commute with the freeway.
Right.
So I think to compare just with a small city our size, just like the mayor and Claudia said, is not going to just do it. I think that we're going to have to look at compensation packages in our neighboring cities, first off, to see how we compare there. And then also in smaller cities. Right. So Mesquite might be comparable in size to us, not exactly, but not at all in location, because the nearest draw for them is quite a ways away. Most people work within that city or kind of commute a little bit. Have you had a situation like this in the past where you recommend a city to compare to?
Yeah, not one, but several.
Several.
Right.
Is there something that comes to mind for you? Is there something that comes to mind for you, a city or somewhere that you think might be comparable to where we're at?
Not at this time. We've done a lot of analysis. Your staff have provided a lot of input. And again, there's nothing sacred about going to Clark County School District too, where they have probably half of your employees could be comparable to a position up there or Clark City government. But we will do our homework. I know we just completed a study in Sun Valley and in Blaine, in Idaho, in Idaho, and they wanted to go to ski communities, you know, to what the salary, and because that was comparable to them. They didn't care if we went out external to outside the state, but to look at other ski communities and do a cost of living adjustment. So this is where we are right now. We need to do our homework of where are those 20 comparable organizations. And that's why we're here. That's why we interviewed 70 folks today and yesterday to kind of get a feeling for what are the internal ideas on that, and what should it be. And it's a good time too. You're about to enter in negotiations in 2022 with your unions, and it's a good time for a study like this.
Anyone else? Again, I don't want to overuse the word unique. I think you have your work cut out for you. But again, I do think when we look at our workforce here for the city, we are a municipal utility. Many other communities are not a municipal utility.
Right.
So that, it brings additional employees on, but certainly an entirely different skill set as well. So I think that is going to be a part of this. It's certainly in the news right now of not being able to find the employees that every company or government entity is in need of. But I don't know how you might characterize that, but I know we have a couple of positions here in the city that have not been filled. And why is that? Is it because of the compensation, or is it because the people with those skill sets are simply not available? In other words, I don't want to try and solve the problem with compensation when the problem is that there's just simply not people out there available.
Right. That point is well taken, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I just wanted, you talked about a compensation philosophy. Is this a dialogue, or is this something that you would like direction on this evening?
I would like some direction. I think the mayor provided some of that when he responded in terms of the total reward package and whether you want to be, and I haven't heard from others in terms of where's your goal? Where do you aspire to be? Do you want to be at the top 90% of salary? Is that and that's the direction I'd like to have. And then as part of this study, we'll help you develop a draft compensation philosophy, get your input on it, and so that it could be policy or wherever you want to put it in a working document.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is meeting the market.
Okay.
We don't need to follow the market. I don't believe we need to be a leader. In the market, but in terms of meeting the market so that we're attracting quality employees. We're attracting people who maybe could get a job in one of the, in Henderson or in Las Vegas.
Right. And
and they choose to work here. And yes, you're talking about the overall compensation package, but in terms of.
And I think once we do the analysis, we're going to find you are up there in the leadership type. I mean, and again, we haven't done it yet. It's premature for me to guess on where you'll be. But everybody's pretty pleased with their salary. I didn't have many complaints in terms of, so.
That does remind me of one other point. We have a number of part-time employees.
Right.
And that
sure do.
that subject has come up before too. And my philosophy is I don't want to be seen as an employer who's holding people below 30 hours a week in order to avoid benefits. I don't think that's a good way to treat employees. I don't think that's a good way to retain quality employees. And I would also look at the salaries or wage levels for those positions. We need to pay people a living wage. So, you know, what work are they doing? Is it something where they prefer that? Some people prefer to only work 20 hours a week. That fits their lifestyle, and they prefer that. So if you could also include at least some idea of why we do have the number of part-time employees.
And that will be included. I was so surprised that you have so many part-timers. And of course, again, when you're talking about total compensation, it's a whole different ballgame for those folks.
Right. All right, thank you. Anyone else? Next steps then?
Oh, what, you're asking me to repeat those? Again, we're going to present to the HR department next week or maybe the end of this week. The scoring of the JATs, that's the internal analysis. We're going to be also proposing where we go, other organizations, which positions we go external on. We'll then conduct the salary survey, the benefit survey. We'll then compare the internal assessment to the external assessment through a regression analysis, be presenting recommendations, draft recommendations. Sometimes we go through what we call solutions, 3, 4, 5 reiterations to get it right. Okay, we will be rolling up your sleeves and working with your employees, though.
Thank you. And, just to let you know, the packet for tonight's meeting is 553 pages long. So as you have those in draft form and are ready to provide them to Mr. Tedder and our HR, please keep in mind we would like to also get that information as soon as possible to give us time to review it as well.
Definitely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to item number 7 then, presentation regarding Boulder City Police Department crime and activity data. Chief Shea.
Good evening. And this presentation is normally done in May. This year it got delayed a little bit by a whole number of different factors. So this is going over activity for the calendar year 2020. And I threw an organization chart in as what we look like now. We've had some changes. You can see where the new positions and how we are now organized with our 3 mid-managers and how the functions now go up to them, except for in the support services. We now have first-line supervisors, line-level people reporting to them, and we've been able to spread our functions out. And the organization really helps us to keep in budget and keep in track and keep doing the priorities we need to do. So we have a whole new system in place to keep things from falling between the cracks like they used to in the past. And we have people to keep track of things. So far, it's working great. And those aren't all people. Those are functions. Some of those functions have people assigned to them as collateral duty assignments. And just so you know, right now, we have 4 vacant full-time positions, 5 part-time position vacancies. So we have 2 officer vacancies, plus we have now 3 out, what could be a long-term disability. So for us, that's pretty significant when you figure we have 4 officers in a patrol squad. So that's more than an entire squad that's gone. But that's just the way things go. We're not having difficulty recruiting. We're very fortunate. We're doing a pretty good job with that. So we should have these vacancies filled pretty quickly. This next slide shows a multi-year progression of the Uniform Crime Report from the FBI. This crime report was, data was developed by the FBI back in the 1930s. The areas that are listed there are definitional crimes established by the FBI on their parameters. So it could say burglary, for example, in Nevada may not quite meet their definition. But these are the crimes as we report them through our crime report on the UCR. And you can see they've stayed fairly constant going all the way back to 2002. I try to do, eventually this will be a 25-year projection. We'll be able to look at a whole 25 years of data. The change that's coming this year is that we've begun into a new system called incident-based reporting. The difference from the incident-based reporting and this is if, let's say, someone went to a residence, broke inside, did a burglary, the residents came home, they assaulted the residents, possibly committed another crime, stole a car, and drove away. The only crime that got reported in this system was the most serious crime. The rest of them were not included in the numbers. That's going to change. So if they go to a place and do 5 crimes, it's going to look like 5 separate incidents under the incident-based reporting system because they wanted to capture what was really happening. So you'll see our numbers go up, but we will go up proportionally with everybody else. So that's why these numbers are this next year, they could be significantly different because we have multiple events that there are multiple crimes committed in the same event by the same suspect. This next list is actually based on our CAD classifications of events. The UCR stats really are very little of the activity for most police agencies. This kind of activity is what most police agencies spend most of their time on. This is what most of their calls take and what most of their manpower goes towards. And on the surface, some of them look pretty innocuous, like, well, that's just not so bad. But when you figure how much time some of these take and you start figuring, well, if you get a domestic violence arrest, you can have 2 or 3 officers tied up for 3 hours just on that one event. A traffic collision can take 2 or 3 hours, multiple people. So when we start looking at what our activity is and what we're doing, these become very important. These are only just a snapshot of there's over 180 different classifications that we use, but this is a snapshot that most people seem to be most interested in. And this year what I did is I color-coded them. Those that are red went up this year, those that are in blue went down, and the black ones I added in this year that I didn't add in the year before. None of the spikes that went up were any alarming. They were very small increases. And the ones that went down were proportionally about the same. So there was no real big differences or spikes or anything to be alarmed about. It's some up, some go down. And the thing about our numbers is because our numbers are so small, in one evening, 2 young people going out and deciding to go down a street and slash a bunch of tires or punch out a bunch of windows can run these up quite a bit just on one evening, one event. So overall, they stay pretty constant over the years. They haven't changed too much. And our guys and gals out there have been doing a really good job. I added another category this year. We were rather unique in that our police department got tasked with enforcing the COVID restrictions. That was unique to us. So I kept that data because, again, these take a lot of time. This took a lot of time to do. So you can see that we did 2,300 COVID inspections from about middle of June up through December 1st. Of course, they went on beyond that, so next time I'll come out and show the hundreds more we did. But during this time, we didn't receive very many violations or complaints. And most of our complaints that we did receive came through Clark County or through Nevada OSHA. And then we went and investigated them. And we did not have to charge anybody with violations. When we went to the businesses and sat down with the owners and their staff, made the corrections, we rarely ever had to go back. And we worked out a system with the employers, the businesses, that if they had a problem with the customer, call us, and we would deal with the customer, and they wouldn't have to get face-to-face with them. We didn't want these battles going on with our businesses. And it worked pretty good. We had no instance of any consequence, and things worked out pretty well. The folks here were just great. The businesses were wonderful. They welcomed the help and were glad to have us come in and help. You know, we'd measure tables out and move chairs and do all sorts of things to make sure they could stay open. That was our goal, to keep the businesses open as much as we possibly could. This is just a little chart that gives a comparison of crimes rates with us, the state, and the country. A little hard to see us under violent crimes, so that's a good thing. That little blue, purple is a little bit lower, it'd even be better, but we're in pretty good shape. And the last slide here, for the last several years, we get rated on a number of different sites that people use for businesses and communities as the safest city in Nevada. And you can see our crime rate there on our per capita crime is pretty low. And I put these little logos on here. These are the ones I went to and look at. And there's more sites than these, and there's a couple if you can go to, you'll see maybe the number 2 or 3 will change places. And one, they left us out somehow and we became non-existent, and Henderson came out number 1. But we'll let some of you number 1 once in a while. So anyway, our guys and gals do a great job. Our citizens do a great job. Our crime rates stay low. And I think a lot of it goes up because the way our community is made up. And our folks call us when things are wrong, and we're able to deal with them pretty quickly. So if you have any questions, that's all I had.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Okay, thank you. This is great. This is great. I especially like that last one.
We use that in recruiting, by the way.
I was going to say, I could imagine. I could imagine. I do have a perception. Okay. I try to stay out of social media. It's irritating most of the time, but suddenly I'll read something, oh my goodness, there's been this horrible increase in burglaries or car thefts and of course somebody sees it happen to someone and there's this assumption that it represents everything. Theft, I see an increase from 82 to 88. Is that a significant increase? Are these, I mean, the numbers seem to be up and down and up and down.
The thing about some of these crimes, these are the crimes that are reported. There are cases when these are reported and then are unfounded. There are some burglaries that end up actually being people trying to rip off their insurance companies. Those things happen. But I use crimes reported, and no, that's a minuscule number to go up by 6 in the course of a year. And it also, most of these events that you see here are people calling in to 911 saying this happened to me. There's also a considerable number of people who don't call, who things happen and they're victimized, but maybe a family member did it or a friend of theirs or something, or they don't even know it occurred, and they'll call us. You'll hear people say, gosh, I lost this ring. I knew it was here, and I don't know what happened to it. I was here 3 months ago. And so no, these are not, where you see anomaly, you can see if you go back on the burglaries here, at one point they were up to 124, 100 in a year.
Yeah.
And it's significantly dropped.
147, yeah, in 2004.
Right. Yeah, thefts were up, 140, 130, 126. And they dropped off. And it depends also on who's committing the crimes. They're cyclic, depending on the population. A lot of burglaries that were done by kids, teenagers. That's not unusual. Daytime burglaries, I break in, they'll take change or something like that. It's just cyclic.
So, so in your estimation, this is the perception that one might read on social media is not necessarily reflected in these numbers.
No, the social media information is not based on data.
No.
So if they call us, we'll give them the data and say, well, here's the reality of what it is. But people they'll hear things, and I've had calls come in and where people have heard about something that's happened over the weekend and it didn't happen. And if it did happen, it certainly didn't happen here. We get complaints from people complaining about things all the time, and I figure out they have the wrong Boulder City. That's not unusual. They get confused with Colorado. I've had people yelling at me on the phone about stuff our officers did on Saturday night, and I don't recognize the streets, and I'm figuring, you got the wrong state. So.
All right, well, thank you very much.
And the paper keeps us honest, too, because they ask all the time about things they hear, which is good, because believe it or not, there are times where I haven't heard everything, and they'll come up with a question, and we'll dig into it and find out what happened, so that's a good thing, too.
I want to thank you very much. You all are doing a wonderful job.
Well, the guys and gals out there are doing a great job, that's for sure.
Anyone else? Chief, we spoke yesterday about the fact that citizens can access information online. Again, I thank you and your department and everyone who worked to get that working. I think that's a great tool for people to see what's happening in their neighborhoods, because that will actually identify the general location or the street where something occurred.
Yes, and I checked on it today because you asked the question. The only difficulty we've been having is with an email system that will send things to you, and they've talked to the state about what's going on with that. So again, one more. This system we have right now really was the paper helped do this. It was really an idea they came up with and a suggestion, asked us to get it. So they helped us out, and I think it's a great deal to have. Like I said, everywhere I've worked before, we've had them, so it's good to have it in place. And it didn't cost us anything, which is even better.
Well, I bugged you for a couple of years on it, so.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But again, it is a great tool, and I think it's something that really helps our residents. You know, looking at these, I heard a statistic this afternoon. I believe homicides in Las Vegas are up by 30%.
Yeah.
You know, the pandemic is stressing a lot of people out. Fortunately, I think here in Boulder City, we've not seen that level of tensions, but certainly this has been a difficult year. The extra duties that the women and men on the police force had to take on, aren't we all lucky we're here in Boulder City?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Well, again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 8, bill introduction.
I need somebody to introduce it.
And I'm waiting as well.
Oh, okay. You're waiting for an introduction. Okay, I would like to introduce Bill number 1905, waive the reading by title only.
Thank you. Bill number 1905, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, amending the Boulder City Municipal Code, Title IV, Business Regulations, Chapter 1, Business License, Section 22, License Classifications and Fees, to repeal the establishment of the Special Events License Review Board by ordinance and other matters properly related thereto. This bill will be considered at the 24th day of August, 2021, City Council regular meeting.
Item number 9, another bill introduction.
Yes, I would like to introduce Bill number 1906, waive the reading by title only.
Thank you. Bill number 1906, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City amending the Boulder City Municipal Code, Title IV, Business Regulations, Chapter 7, Secondhand and Junk Dealers, to clarify the types of conduct and persons accepted from the provisions of the chapter and other matters properly related thereto. This item will be considered at the August 24th, 2021 regular City Council meeting.
Thank you. And in response to earlier public comment, I do know that there have been meetings held with businesses in Boulder City that may be impacted by this, and we will certainly have a discussion once we do consider these bills. Item number 10, we have consideration of bill number 1904.
Good evening, Diane Pelletier, Boulder City Finance Director. Before you this evening is consideration, we're asking for your consideration on Bill number 1904. It's an ordinance of the City of Boulder City approving agreement number 00666A, which is a lease between the City of Boulder City and Tower Holdings, LLC, to lease land for an existing cellular communications tower site located at U.S. Interstate 11 and 95 interchange. This lease agreement is for an existing cell tower. It's approximately 2,200 feet from U.S. 95 Interstate 11 interchange. It expired August 31st, 2020. Tenant is currently occupying on a month-to-month tenancy while new lease terms are negotiated. City Council authorized a new appraisal of the site on January 12, 2021. The average of the two appraisals is $26,300 per year. The new lease is for a 10-year period with one 5-year option, and the initial rent is $26,520 per year, and the annual rent will increase by approximately 3% per year, rounded to the nearest $5 increment. This bill was introduced at the July 13th Council meeting, and we are asking for your consideration this evening.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on Bill 1904? Anyone wishing to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to accept bill number 1904.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you, Ms. Pelletier.
Mayor, bill number 1904 will be known as ordinance number 1668, effective August 18th, 2021.
Thank you. Item number 11, matters pertaining to vacation of easements. Mr. Littrell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you just stated, item number 11 is for 2 utility easement vacations. Part A is to conduct a public hearing. Do you want me to explain the easements before we do that, or?
If you could just briefly describe each, please.
Part B is resolution number 7314. It's a utility easement that's on 115 Casa Montana Court and also 116 Stone Canyon Road. The map in the packet shows the utility easement running through the middle of the property. It used to be on the border of the property, but the resident had purchased 7,700 acres from the city, and now the utility easement is running through the property. Public Works has looked into that utility easement. We don't have any utilities in it, so we're perfectly fine with abandoning that easement. And then item C, similar situation at 383 Claremont Street. The property owner hasn't yet, but they would like to purchase 3,650 square feet adjacent to their property. There's a utility easement running along the east side of the property, and when they do purchase that, it'll end up being through the center of the property. There are no utilities in that, and Public Works is okay with vacating that one as well.
Thank you. And I would just like to clarify on A, it's the purchase of 7,700 square feet.
Did I say acres?
You did.
I started writing acres when I was taking my notes, and then I scribbled over it and said square feet, but...
We're not selling 7,700?
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone have questions regarding the specifics of this? We'll get into other questions or comments later, but any specific questions on either of these? All right, then we will open the public hearing on Resolution 7314 and 7315, both dealing with the vacation of easements. Anyone wishing to speak? Ms. DeShane?
Judy DeShane. I was just wondering now, I've seen these come up before where we're vacating an easement. What I'm wondering is if we shouldn't maybe consider moving the easement over to the edge of whatever property they're now going to have, in case there's a reason in the future somebody behind them builds and you want the easement to go through. And then if you get rid of all of it and there's no easement through the property, if sometime in the future someone else needs that easement to get to their property, which is behind, you have a whole kettle of fish. So I'm wondering if we can't kind of establish a policy, I guess, to move the easement so it's out of the way of the person that needs it moved, but it would still be available for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak during the public hearing portion of this? Anyone wishing to call in? The phone number is 702-589-9629. Again, this is a public hearing on resolutions 7314 and 7315 concerning the vacation of utility easements. Anyone wishing to speak, the phone number is 702-589-9629. All right, hearing no one else for the public hearing, we will close that portion of it. Mr. Littrell, would you like to address the, I know from looking at it in our discussion yesterday, these easements are simply not going to be needed.
Yes.
And they are utility easements.
Yes. For Part B, 7314, the easement was at the rear of the lot. There was actually a water line that was running through that. The property owner had to pay to move that water line, and now it's entirely on city property. If for any chance that that was ever sold in the future, that one of the requirements would be that we get a utility easement from the future purchaser. For Part C, actually a part of their purchase agreement, there is going to be a utility easement on the new eastern boundary. So there will be another one included there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions or comments from council? Anyone wishing to make a motion on resolution 7314?
Yeah. I would like to make a motion to accept resolution number 7314.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And then resolution 7315.
I move to accept resolution number 7315.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Mr. Littrell, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We will now move to item number 12, matters related to opioid litigation. Madam City Attorney.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you. With your permission, I would like to briefly present 12A and have that considered, and then we would move forward to 12B and C.
With this particular item, I know I've had discussions about this in the past, had received presentations a couple of years ago, knowing that this litigation was going to be put forth or was moving forward across the country. We do have two very different resolutions here, I think. Resolution 7316 is regarding an agreement with the state of Nevada for the litigation that the state is pursuing. Is that correct?
Yes, and I can briefly go over that if you'd like.
All right.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, so resolution 7316 would approve the One Nevada agreement on the allocation of opioid recoveries. As you may know, overuse of painkillers, known as opioids, have become a public health crisis throughout the nation. Drug manufacturers, distributors, and medical experts are accused of minimizing the risks and knowingly ignoring the overuse of painkillers in the United States. The city of Boulder City is one of many cities that is in multi-jurisdictional litigation right now against these various opioid manufacturers and distributors. The Nevada Attorney General approached the city of Boulder City regarding this agreement, and this agreement would provide a plan on how the funds for any Nevada opioid-related settlements or bankruptcy distribution would be allocated among the state and the various local government entities to reduce the effects of the opioid epidemic on the state. This proposed agreement was created in response to the proposed Purdue Pharma bankruptcy plan that was voted on July 14, 2021. This plan allows states and local governments to decide for themselves how best to allocate funds from the bankruptcy. Nevada is among a group of 15 states that have negotiated improvements to the plan to include additional funds for states, advancements in payments, and expansion of a document repository. The plan, once approved, will begin the distribution of funds to assist in addressing the opioid epidemic. This plan strongly encourages states to work with the local governments within their states to reach an agreement for the allocation of those funds. And when I say plan, I mean the bankruptcy plan. So that is why the state proposed this allocation agreement and has proposed it to all of the local governments within the state of Nevada. The majority of the litigating cities have already signed on. The city of Las Vegas, city of Reno, city of Henderson, West Wendover, Elko have all approved of the allocation agreement. North Las Vegas, Mesquite have it on their agendas like we do this week. So we do recommend that this city enter into this allocation agreement. It will allow the state of Nevada to negotiate on our behalf, and would allow a predetermined, any settlement funds would be given to the cities on a predetermined amount based on certain factors on how we've been affected by the opioid epidemic. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. When you say factors as to how Boulder City's been affected, then this is not just a straight per capita distribution that's being proposed. It would be related to the harm that these drugs did to our community?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Bridges?
So I'm assuming that what would be received by the state of Nevada, we would receive 1.148%. Is that the?
It would be 0.148%, correct.
0.148%, okay. And that also this would be outside of legal fees. That is a separate payment structure within this, that the 1.148% is actual payment that would come to the city.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Again, I think the alternative here is that we try and reinvent this wheel that's been happening over the past 3 years. The state has already done a considerable amount of that work. And again, we are late to this because of the lack of notification to the state, but the state looked through who had been responding to this apparently, and that's how they contacted you. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. With that then, any other questions? Councilmember Jorgensen?
How would we get the data knowing how we are affected as a city?
I can request that from the state. The data is collected by the federal government, and the state is going to be using that data, but I can definitely get that from the state.
What are reporting entities in the city that help them to understand how it affects us?
Well, again, they get that data from the federal government. So, opioid prescriptions, the number of opioid use disorders, the number of opioid deaths, those are all statistics that are tracked by the federal government from various methods. I would say they probably get it from doctor's offices, from the police department, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'll move for approval of Resolution 7316. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that then brings us to Resolution 7317.
Thank you, Mayor. Item B is discussion and direction regarding selection of outside legal counsel for opioid regulation, opioid-related litigation. And item C is Resolution 7313, in which the council can consider approving a letter of retention with the law firm of Keller Lankner. We are calling Seth Meyer with the law firm of Keller Lankner, and he'll be on the line to answer any questions once I'm finished presenting.
You're on speakerphone at the Boulder City Council now.
Hi there.
Do this up here. So, as of February 25th, 2019, the law firm of Keller Lankner, an experienced firm based out of Chicago, has represented the city in this multi-jurisdictional litigation against the various opioid manufacturers and distributors for damages that the city has incurred in addressing the opioid epidemic. So, the city has initiated litigation against multiple defendants, not just the defendants that the state is negotiating with, but hundreds of defendants that have been accused of these abuses, I should say. Pursuant to Boulder City's purchasing policy, contracts equal to or in excess of $150,000 must be approved by the city council. And being as the city may receive funds from this litigation, which would entitle its retained counsel to contingency fees, the city attorney is seeking city council's direction on the selection of outside counsel. So again, we have retained the law firm of Keller Lankner for the past couple of years. They have done a significant amount of work on the case. They have filed a complaint. We're currently litigating in a federal court and we filed in Nevada District Court, but all of the cases were consolidated into an Ohio District Court. Seth Meyer with Keller Lankner can provide you some additional details on what the law firm has done so far. So the law firm of Keller Lankner represents us with also local counsel representation provided by Jolly Erga. So with that, we are seeking direction from council on counsel to use in the opioid litigation. The other cities have used the law firm of Eglet Adams. We in Mesquite use this law firm. If the council does decide to go a different direction, of course, this law firm has done a lot of work and has represented the city well, and of course would be entitled to their compensation from the services provided as a result of the litigation. So that would, just for full transparency, that would be they would still be entitled to that if we were to go a different direction. So with that, I'll open it up for council discussion and questions.
Thank you. As I mentioned at the outset, I had brought this litigation to the attention of the former city manager and city attorney on more than one occasion, and had had conversations with them. It was from the presentation by the firm of Robert Eglet. He was doing those presentations to representatives from all of the cities here in Southern Nevada. Again, I had followed up on those conversations. I was never given a reply as to what actions might be taken, other than to be said, well, it doesn't appear to be a problem in Boulder City, so we're not going to take any action. only to find out that apparently action was taken on this. As disappointing as that is to me personally, I think it's also a disservice to the community when things like that are done. But I also have a concern with the local firm that has been retained in this. Again, with the notification from the state of Nevada regarding the allocation agreement, that was just someone in the Attorney General's office that happened to notice that Boulder City wasn't showing up on their list and contacting us. Again, I think that's a failure of the attorney firm, the local firm, not looking for all of the different litigation aspects that are occurring. Clearly, the state of Nevada has done significant work and appears to be close to a settlement for them. As far as attorney fees go, the fees are going to get paid out of whatever settlement occurs. So my concern with this is not necessarily with the national firm that's doing this, but with the local firm that was retained, and as pointed out in public comment, was a firm who one of the partners is the father of the former mayor. So I have questions that I have not had an opportunity to ask or have answered yet as far as looking for other local counsel. I would prefer not to go forward with this resolution at this time. Clearly, this litigation has already been going on for a couple of years, and from all indications, it's going to go on for a couple of more years. So I don't know that there's a necessity right now to make a decision on the retention of these law firms.
Well, the decision before you today is whether to continue with the current law firm or to explore other law firms. So the direction would be if the council wants to explore other law firms, then that direction would have to be provided tonight so that we could explore what other alternatives are available. The current retainer agreement would not be terminated or ended in any way, but that is the decision before you today.
Thank you. Again, I believe I've made my position clear that with regard to this aspect of it, I believe additional time is necessary. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, thank you. I was really impressed by the presentation that we were given the other day from Mr. Meyer, Keller Lankner, in terms of the scope of the work involved, in terms of the work they've already completed. And I do feel very comfortable of approving them to continue the work they're doing. And the resolution for their retention and contingent fee agreement, it sounds like starting with a different law firm is reinventing the wheel. They have a lot of work behind them, and a lot of companies they're going after. So that's where I stand on that.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Fox?
I have the same feelings with Claudia. As you know, they've been working on it for 2 years already. Don't want to waste anybody's time.
I think a clarification of that's necessary. I think there's a misunderstanding about this firm and this agreement. This firm isn't singularly representing the city of Boulder City. This firm probably has hundreds or maybe even thousands of clients. Is that accurate?
I believe Mr. Meyer can answer.
I'm happy to respond. We don't have hundreds of clients. I think I could get you the total number, but it's in the dozens and it's in the few dozens. I think as noted on during the discussion today, we only have 2 clients in the state of Nevada. I do think it's important to clarify for the record your statement that it was a failure of either of the law firms regarding the allocation process. I think as I noted during the meetings last week, these allocations have unfolded very organically, and very bespoke on a state-by-state basis. The states do not necessarily know who to reach out to, and so a lot of these negotiations have gone from the state AG's office to the city, and then the outside counsel steps in to navigate them. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in that regard. The other thing, there are a number of other defendants that we'd be continuing to pursue actions against. There's obviously navigating this procedure through allocation, and simply signing on is just the first step. It's not going to resolve that matter. And so I think I've mentioned to Brittany, but I'll make the same point to the entire council. I do think we need to be clear the scope of our representation in order to zealously pursue the city's interest in this case. Each city is differently situated, and the work that we're doing in other states and on behalf of Mesquite is obviously different than the work we'd be doing on behalf of Boulder City.
I can appreciate that. The fact is, though, that it appears most other governmental agencies in the state of Nevada had some communications with the AG's office regarding the litigation that the state of Nevada was pursuing, and apparently has arrived at some type of settlement. We were not
They're also
apparently part of
represented.
that.
The state's outside counsel also represents those municipalities, so they didn't have far to go.
Okay. Again, I have not a problem with the national firm, with Keller Linkner. I have an issue with the local firm that has been retained to do this work. I have a real problem with how this came about, the lack of information that was ever provided to council, the lack of any, even the slightest effort to get input and direction from city council on how these agreements came to be. With that, I will leave it there, and I invite other members of council to take whatever action they feel is appropriate.
I just have a question. Are those two separate then? So do we have the representation from Keller Linkner separate from our local?
So under the fee agreement that's before you in the resolution, the representation would be Keller Linkner and with local counsel provided by Jolly Urga. So if you approve the resolution today, you would be approving the agreement with both law firms.
I just to be clear for the city's benefit, we obviously are happy to supply other local counsel and to do that in whatever methodology in terms of selecting the firm. I think what would be beneficial and helpful at this juncture, given whatever substitution we need to do, is to get some authorization to continue representing the city today. I know we obviously believe that we have an existing representation agreement, but I think given the recent questions raised, it would be important for us to have authorization to continue representing the city, at least vis-a-vis Keller Linkner.
Councilmember Bridges?
Okay, would it be possible to approve Keller Linkner letter of retention contingent fee, however, amending it to have it contingent on a different or another recommended, or to look into whether or not this is a right choice for us as local representation, but to just in general approve of the
Yes, and 12B.
The letter of retention.
Yes, in 12B, I think that, so in 12B, the council can provide direction to explore other counsel, and that includes approving the current national counsel, but exploring different local counsel. So I would do that under 12B, and then we'd bring back a different retention agreement that reflects the appropriate counsel at a different meeting. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, so that instead of approving Resolution 7317 would be the motion to to choose Keller Lankner, but with evaluation of the possibility of other outside local counsel.
That's correct.
Okay.
That would be the motion.
Okay. I would like to make that motion.
If anyone wishes to second that motion, they may do so at this time.
I'll second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm a nay vote.
Aye. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further direction? Do you need a decision then on Resolution 7317 at this time?
I don't believe so. If someone wants to make a motion, but the direction from council is to continue with Keller Lankner, but explore local counsel. So the direction would be to bring back a retainer agreement with and other options for local counsel before approving the official retainer agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone wishing to take action on Resolution 7317 at this time? Thank you, Madam City Attorney. We'll move on to our next item, number 13. Discussion and direction regarding the selection of outside legal counsel to provide temporary legal services.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Item 13 is, again, as you just read, discussion and direction regarding selection of outside legal counsel to provide temporary legal services pursuant to Section 15, Sub 4 of the Boulder City Charter. As you know, there will be a need beginning in September for temporary outside counsel to assist the city attorney's office for a period of 3 to 4 months. Myself, the city attorney, would continue to be available at a reduced hourly basis during this time. The city council has several options for these services, including an interlocal agreement with another jurisdiction, an agreement with a law firm, or a contract agreement with an individual attorney. So I had reached out to the city of Henderson regarding an interlocal agreement as a possible option to serve as, in which the city attorney's office for the city of Henderson would serve as temporary counsel and provide us with certain services via an interlocal agreement. NRS Chapter 277 allows jurisdictions to enter into agreements to share services. Under the draft interlocal that I have discussed with the city of Henderson, they would provide Henderson city attorneys to provide the following services: in-person legal guidance at Boulder City Council meetings and redevelopment agency meetings, reviewing all contracts, ordinances, and resolutions proposed to be approved by the city during the term of the agreement, and providing legal guidance to all Boulder City public officers, council members, the mayor, and department heads on an as-needed basis. The agreement would be effective upon approval of both city councils and would last until the end of December with a one-time 90-day extension if necessary, and the city would be billed hourly, similar to our agreements with outside counsel, at the rate of $88 per hour, not to exceed $50,000, and could be absorbed in the current city attorney fiscal year budget. Ultimately, the charter vests the council with this decision, and so there are 3 options to consider and provide direction on. One would be the interlocal agreement with the city of Henderson. Another direction might be to look at outside law firms and ask them to provide proposals for providing these services at a similar hourly rate. I will say private firms tend to charge anywhere from $200 to $600 an hour for the attorney time. Another option would be considering hiring an individual attorney to assist the office on a contract basis for this time period. So with that, we're asking you to direct staff to proceed with the appropriate arrangement that you feel.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that upon reviewing all the options, I'm certainly in favor of the interlocal agreement with the city of Henderson. When you look at the dollar for dollar, and also we would have multiple counsels, multiple attorneys available to us on whether it was contracts or any other specific interests. So that's my perspective on this.
Anyone else? Anyone wishing to take action on this item?
I would like to make a motion to accept the City of Henderson's counsel as the option and with the interlocal agreement between the City of Henderson and the City of Boulder City.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Madam City Attorney. It appears there's direction to proceed with the interlocal agreement. Item number 14, for possible action, City Council appointments. Up first is the Allotment Committee. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. For the benefit of the new council members, the appointment of the Allotment Committee is a little different from our other boards. This one, per the charter, is drawn by lot. We had 2 volunteers, and these particular volunteers did serve a term that ended on 6/30/2021, although we have multiple terms that are available, so it's at your pleasure if you want whoever you draw by lot appointed to the term that will now end on 2023 or one that would end on 2022. And with that, I will ask the mayor to draw the names by lot.
And we have 2 names for 6 positions.
Correct.
However, the charter requires that these be drawn by lot. The first is Rebecca Ballesteri. Do we need to vote, or it's been drawn by lot?
Just drawn by lot.
And the second is Teresa Beaver.
Will you just clarify, though, would you like them appointed to the term that ends on 2023?
I will leave that up to others.
I would like them to go until 2023. I think it's beneficial when you're in there longer.
All those in agreement, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So we have 2 of the 6 positions, so they still lack a quorum on that committee.
That's correct. And we're looking for volunteers if anybody would like to volunteer. Next is item B, which is the Audit Review Committee. The Audit Review Committee is a committee in charge of overseeing the independent audit, the recommendation for selection of the independent auditor, and resolution of audit findings. Currently, there are 2 vacancies. These are non-voting members that must be residents of Boulder City. We do have 1 member who would like to be reappointed, and that's Judy DeShane. Her appointment ended on June 1st, 2021, and we have other applications that are on file.
Thank you. And we are now back to our, I will say, normal process here. So I will open nominations and nominate Judy DeShane and Annette Landry. Any other names that people would place in nomination for the Audit Review Committee?
I would like to nominate Roger Tobler.
Any other names?
I'd like to nominate Roger as well.
It's only, at this point, it's only necessary to nominate a person 1 time.
Gotcha.
Any other names for nomination? All right, we will begin with Judy DeShane then. All those in favor of Judy DeShane, please raise your hand. Okay, that's 4 positive votes. All those in favor of Annette Landry, please raise your hand. We have my vote only. All those in favor of Roger Tobler, please raise your hand. We have 3 votes for Mr. Tobler. I believe that fills all the positions on that committee.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will let you explain the Combined Board of Appeals.
So the Combined Board of Appeals was placed on the agenda, but it has since changed format. So the Combined Board of Appeals was created by ordinance to determine the suitability of alternate materials and methods of contractors and to provide for reasonable interpretations of the provisions of the code. To date, the Combined Board of Appeals had never met. During the update to the building code in 2020, Section 115 of the Administrative Code was amended to reflect the authority of appeals of the building official decision be heard by the Planning Commission. So the Combined Board of Appeals will no longer be an established committee, but there is still a method for appeals, and that's the Planning Commission. And I left this on the agenda just so there's kind of a story and people understand why we no longer have the Combined Board of Appeals. Next item on the agenda is a council appointment.
Madam City Clerk, let me just mention one thing. If a person feels that an item, a building item or building type construction method, they can appeal that to the Planning Commission.
Correct.
If that's been rejected by the Building Department. But there is also an additional appeal available to this council from the Planning Commission, I believe.
That's correct.
And then at that point, the decision of council is final.
Unless they take it to court.
Well, they can decide that, but they have no more appeals.
With the city, that's
with the
correct.
city. All right, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So next is a council appointment to the Boulder City Museum and Historical Association. The city entered into an agreement with the Boulder City Museum and Historical Association in June of 2012. The BCMHA is a 501c3 organization that oversees the Boulder Dam Hotel and Museum located at 1305 Arizona Street. The mission of the BCMHA is to preserve, interpret, curate, and communicate the histories of the Hoover Dam and Boulder City. Section 10B of the agreement states that one of the BCMHA Board of Directors shall be a member of the City Council or their designee. The BCMAH Board meets on the first Tuesday of every other month at 5 p.m. This council member will serve the position until appointments are made after the next municipal election.
Thank you. And again, I'm not sure how it had come about, but you had been serving in that position, I have been told. The position apparently with the association does designate a member of council. Is there anyone wishing to serve in that position?
I'd be interested in that.
Anyone else? All right, we can move on then with only one name in nomination to our last item, the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition.
The SNRPC is a regional agency tasked with evaluating issues that impacts the region, including natural resource protection, land use, and air quality. They meet monthly on the fourth Thursday of each month at 4 p.m.
Anyone wishing to serve on that coalition board? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I'm willing to continue on in that position. I know that I wasn't positive about that at the last meeting, but giving it some thought, and I honestly don't know what the future of it holds, but I'm certainly willing to continue participating in that entity.
I appreciate you being willing to continue on that after having given that up for other positions. Anyone else interested in that position? Okay, then I believe we have completed that item, and we can now move to item number 15. Correction to the previously approved minutes of the June 8th, 2021 regular City Council meeting.
Thank you. After the June 8th minutes were approved, it was realized that a condition that had been included in the motion made at the June 8th meeting was not reflected properly. It was reflected properly in the resolution, but just for clarification, and so that there's, again, a history to this, I would request that you approve the change to the motion on item number 9. It's highlighted in yellow. And in order to approve minutes that were previously approved, this does require a 2/3 vote, which at this point would be a unanimous vote without Councilmember Adams.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions or comments? Since I had made the original motion, and I agree that the wording now is a little more specific and more reflective of what that motion had been, I will move to adopt these minutes. Anyone wishing to second that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is unanimous approval then.
Thank you.
Item number 16, Resolution 7318.
Good evening,
Mr.
Mayor
Bolt.
and Council. I'm Bryce Bolt, your Administrative Services Director. You have before you this evening Resolution number 7318, approving the employment agreement between Tammy McKay and the City of Boulder City. Mark Ricciardi of Fisher Phillips reviewed the contract on behalf of the city and is here to answer any questions you may have. Mr. Ricciardi.
Thank you and good evening. If you'd like, I can walk you through a little bit of the history on this document and then take any questions. So as you may remember, we've had 3 employment agreements that needed to come before the council. This is the 3rd one. The first was for the new city attorney and city manager. And this particular contract is based very, very similar to those 2. There were a few changes that we recommended be made, and I spoke to Ms. McKay about a number of these, and I think she made some good suggestions. And if you'd like, I can walk you through the contract and where some of the changes are that we suggested, where it differs from the other contracts. I will just stop at Section 3 compensation because that Section 3, Paragraph 1 is not something that we have any input on at my office. We're just looking at the legal aspects of it. The business decision of what salary you end up agreeing to is, of course, for your vote. In the form is Ms. McKay's requested salary number. If you flip to the second page, the annual performance evaluation and salary adjustments, and I don't remember discussing this specifically with Ms. McKay, but in looking at it again, it may be unnecessary to have that first very early interim performance evaluation because she has been serving in the acting position and serving in the deputy position for many years. That may be an unnecessary exercise for the city council. The actual 2022 evaluation would probably be the best one to start with. And so if you were going to adopt this contract tonight in some form, I might suggest we just delete that 6-month evaluation language. If you go down to Section 5, vacation and sick leave, this was something that we definitely discussed with Ms. McKay, and she's currently an employee with leave banks, so there was no reason to dump a one-time allotment of leave into this contract. She's not new to the city, so for other people, it made sense to give them some leave to start with. And then in terms of leave tracking, your tracking system, your automated tracking system here at the city is, my understanding, pretty easy to put in your requested vacation, but someone has to check a box as the quote-unquote supervisor of that person. And that really doesn't work too well when you have someone appointed at this level. So what we thought about and talked about was maybe having another director, not supervising the city clerk, but simply checking that box, acknowledging, yes, there was a vacation request made in the system. So that's the language we've added there in paragraph 2, and that differs from the way the city manager's contract works. If you flip to paragraph, let's see, where's the next change? I think actually that may have been the last one. There was language in other contracts that put some limitations on payouts of leave. This one is a little different in the sense that Ms. McKay has been with the city for quite some time, so there was less risk of maybe a premature departure. So the leave payouts upon Ms. McKay leaving are similar to other department heads in the city. So that seemed to make sense from our standpoint, so we went ahead and made that revision. I think that's the major points I was going to bring to your attention, but I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ricciardi. There was one thing I noticed that was a difference from the other 2 contracts. And again, the intent had been with these contracts to bring some conformity to the language. I believe that the other 2 contracts had changed the potential compensation adjustment. Initially, this reads 0% to 5% at the annual evaluation, and I believe it was agreed in the other 2 that that would be modified to from 0% to 7% as possible salary increase at the annual evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, now that you bring it to my attention and remind me, you are correct, it is different, but I want to be sure I'm sure of the difference before we state it on the record, because I think it's not 7. I believe the other contract, I'm looking at it now, the other 2 contracts are 0 to 6.
Okay.
And uniformity is certainly a good idea, and how that got to be different, I don't know. It was unintentional. It's not something that was done on purpose, believe me.
Oh, we've been looking at a lot of whereases and things like that in these. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess that then brings us to decisions regarding the salary level. Again, the salary level had been established for the position by the previous council based on information of similar positions elsewhere. Ms. McKay has asked for the maximum in that range. Any questions or comments on that? My belief is that we should not start at the maximum of that range. I would propose a level of $110,000 for that. Any other members of council that would support that level? Anyone wishing then to make some sort of statement about the level of compensation you believe should be made? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I believe, I've been looking at the numbers and actually looking at that Transparent Nevada and comparing those numbers to the actual numbers in our classification system. Looking at comparing cities, I went through the same lists and charts as I did for our earlier discussion on the study. And I believe 115,000 is an appropriate amount.
Is there agreement on that amount with other members of council?
I agree on that.
I agree.
Okay. Mr. Ricciardi, you had brought up the initial evaluation. Since we are perhaps within 6 months of that March date, I'm assuming that's what you were referring to, since we're in August now and the annual evaluations would be set for March of each year, that we would either remove or modify the wording regarding the initial evaluation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think you could simply delete the first two sentences in section 3, subsection 2. So that first section talks about the interim performance evaluation, and the second sentence talks about what would happen before or after that. So those two sentences could be deleted, and then that section would just start with employees' performance shall be reviewed. And it appears that there's a word then there right before shall that should come out. So that the first sentence of that subsection would read, employees' performance shall be reviewed and measured by the City Council annually on around March of each year, beginning with the March 22 evaluation on or around. And I suppose if this contract were approved tonight, for printing and signature, we would plug in the appropriate date into that spot, which I believe would be March 15th, 22.
Thank you.
And then if you are going to make any other changes to this contract, right there in that paragraph, if you wanted to change the 0% to 6% instead of 5%, you would vote on that and do that as well.
All right. Ms. McKay, do you have any concerns with either of those changes?
I just wanted to bring something to your attention. I believe this should be before, because it would never.
That's a good point. Okay, so one, I assume it's a typo, or if not, it was a misunderstanding. Ms. McKay brought up on page 4, section 10, there's a recapture provision way down at the bottom, 10C. The very last sentence on that page says, any salary and benefits paid to employee during a suspension or administrative leave that commenced after adoption of the City Council's resolution to terminate will be deducted from the severance pay. I believe the word after should be before. So in that last sentence in section C, where it says any salary and benefits paid to employee during a suspension or administrative leave that commenced before adoption of the City Council's resolution to terminate. So I would recommend we make that change, that for whatever reason that word got flip-flopped.
All right. Again, Ms. McKay, do you have any concerns with those changes that have been discussed? That would be then the initial evaluation, the calculation of any returned funds, depending on the type of termination, and the change to the potential annual salary during your evaluation between 0 and 6% rather than 0 and 5%.
Yes, I'm agreeable to all of the changes that have been brought before council tonight.
Thank you. Council members, anyone have other thoughts on the changes that Mr. Ricciardi has reviewed for us? Any other changes, Mr. Ricciardi, that you believe need to be considered?
No, sir. I think that this contract is in good shape, and to the most extent possible, it's consistent with our drafting of the others.
All right, thank you. I will move then for approval of Resolution 7318 with the changes that have been acknowledged by the council for salary level, the removal of the initial evaluation period in lieu of the annual evaluation, the leave tracking statement, the change to the potential salary increase from 0% to 6%. And the change in language on the return of any salary during administrative leave. Does that cover the changes we've discussed?
I think so, yes. Yes, sir.
Then that will be my motion. Is there anyone wishing to second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Mr. Ricciardi, appreciate your work on all of these contracts. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you for letting us assist.
Thank you. And Ms. McKay?
Well, I'd first like to say thank you and how grateful I am to the mayor and city council for this opportunity. I've been working and representing Boulder City for a long time. I will continue to display professionalism, dedication, and commitment, and I will work diligently to communicate effectively with the council. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you. And we look forward to having you in that position and all the work you've already been doing as the acting city clerk.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item number 17, the city manager report. Mr. Tedder?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I have nothing unusual to report this evening. So,
thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, we'll move to our last public comment period. Public comment during this portion of the meeting may be on any issue. Speakers will have up to 5 minutes to speak. And as always, we ask that you be clear and concise and civil with your comments. Anyone in chambers that would wish to speak during our final public comment? Please come forward and give your name.
Good evening. I'm Glenna Dunn. For the last 15 years, I have published the regional guide to antiquing for Southern Nevada, using it to build up Boulder City as Nevada's best small town for antiquing, an acclamation granted to us by 3 different magazines, including Country Living, House Beautiful, and Only in Your State. It has revitalized our downtown area, bringing not only antique stores to the city, but about 4 times as many restaurants as before I started publishing the guide as well. Up until last year, I also owned and operated the oldest and longest operating antique store in Boulder City. It had a good 20-year run. It also brought a lot of attention, national attention even, to Boulder City, as it was featured on History Channel 4 times, Discovery Channel for the pedal cars, and it was also featured in regional magazines for the Native American jewelry, that I have a huge selection of authentic Native American jewelry, not import like we have in so many of our stores that are actually against the Federal Indian Arts and Crafts Act. It's a federal law that stores aren't allowed to carry that. I want to address tonight the upcoming revisions to our city code in Chapter 7 of Title 4. I fully understand that these changes do need to be made to bring us into compliance with Nevada state law, as stated in NRS 647, which states that anyone doing business in whole or in part, which it was actually Brittany Walker reading that very carefully during my license board hearing, that I had never understood the in part before. So that was, I'd always just focused on the exemptions in that NRS for antiques, collectibles, coin, and used books. So our code is actually not in compliance with the state law as it is currently at the current language, which is clearly misleading to antique dealers such as myself, who read it as in 27A, it states that antique dealers who have a place in the city for purchasing, trading, or dealing predominantly in antiques are exempt from anything in that chapter, which deals with secondhand licensing. In 2009, I was requested to apply for a secondhand license, which I did. My license application was approved by the chief of police, Finn, at the time, and when I pointed out the ordinance, the license was never issued. So clearly, it's confusing to the city who's responsible for administering the secondhand licensing. This Nevada law states that. They're also responsible for enforcing or for monitoring and enforcing secondhand and pawnbroker licensing. So it clearly does need to be addressed. Publicly posted misinformation has proved to be very costly to me and the city. It resulted in my licenses being revoked last November, and the city is to this day continuing to criminally prosecute me for 9 misdemeanor violations of NRS 647. My trial was supposed to be August 5th, but it's been delayed. So that being said, as council considers the new language proposed, I wrote down some thoughts. These changes aren't merely clarifying the types of conduct and persons exempted from the provisions of the chapter. They're a 180-degree turnaround from the current ordinance exempting antique dealers who have a place in the city for purchasing, trading, or dealing predominantly antiques. Operating as an antique store has historically been a buy-sell trade industry. In addition to serving our community's needs in all 3 of these aspects of our operations, we provide Boulder City's acclaim as Nevada's best small town for antiquing. Drawing that curated visitor traffic has expanded and revitalized our downtown with quaint shops and 4 times as many restaurants in Boulder City as it had when I opened back in time 2 decades ago. Okay, some of this I've gone over. It's business owners like myself that pay property tax, licensing fees, collect sales tax, much of which returns to the city from the state. We invest in our Chamber of Commerce mission that enhances the quality of the Boulder City experience for businesses, residents, and visitors.
Ms. Dunn, if you would please conclude your remarks. The 5 minutes has expired for your comment period.
Okay, if there's no further interest in what I have to say, I'm done.
It's not that, ma'am. It's that the 5-minute period is up. Also, we will be hearing those bills at our next meeting. You'll have an opportunity to speak at that time as well.
I'm going to be out of town unless I change my plans. I did not realize.
All right, thank you.
I'll email you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in chambers that wishes to speak? Ms. DeShane?
Judy DeShane. It's just a comment. I was at one of our small shops a month or so ago when the owner of the shop came in, and she was in seventh heaven because she had been granted one of the grants that the prior council had put out for businesses. She had applied, and she was in seventh heaven. She said it just made all the difference in the world. And I thought the council should know that the people that received those grants, many of them really, really needed them, and this was a big, big save for her and her business. So I just wanted you guys to know that.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers wishing to speak? All right, we will open up the phone line. If anyone wishes to call in for our final public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629. This is the final public comment period. Anyone wishing to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629. All right, hearing no others, then we will close the final public comment period and move to City Council reports. Councilmember Bridges.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to welcome our new city manager, Taylor Tedder, and welcome to Boulder City. And secondly, as I typically do, I wanted to say that Emergency Aid of Boulder City has funds available to help people with their rent and utilities and their food. There is money, there's county money that's been given to the city, and it's being handled by the county. So you must contact Emergency Aid first, and if necessary, they will help you go through the portal to have access to the funds to assist with rent and utilities. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen.
Thank you. I also want to welcome Mr. Tedder to Boulder City and thank him for his service. I also wanted to tell Michael Mays thank you. I didn't get a chance to do that for acting as our city manager for so long and doing your other job on top of it. So we're very appreciative of that. I don't know if this is inappropriate, but tonight I had the chance to go attend a drug court graduation. And I just think it's things like that in a community like this that make it special. And it was really a great opportunity to go see success on that level.
Councilmember Fox.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Mr. Mays for all the work he put in during that time, and welcome Mr. Tedder. Thank you.
Thank you. I also attended the drug court graduation that Councilmember Jorgensen referred to. This is, I don't know, about 6, 7, 8 that I have attended now. The work that those folks do to resolve problems in their lives, and that has a direct impact on their families, their friends. It is something to see the work that they go through. It is a months-long process, and it is certainly great to see those folks come out successfully at the end of that. Chautauqua, if anybody wants to try and spell that without having it right there in front of you, well, good luck with that. But there will be Chautauqua performances this year. They're scheduled for October. Those folks are looking for volunteers. If you can figure out how to spell it, you can find their website on the web. School's back in session. You know, kids haven't been in school for more than a year. I know I saw the group that was in the Tiny Tots program. Boy, are they ready to go back to school. So drive slow. Don't, take care when you're in the school zones. I was at the Convention and Visitors Authority meeting this morning. The Magic Convention is happening right now. For those that may think that's about magicians, it's not. It is primarily clothing manufacturers. They do have good attendance, but it is still only a little more than 50% of what they had in 2019. What's causing the drop in attendance is clearly the pandemic. It's not over. Distributors and exhibitors are not coming. The Convention and Visitors Authority continues to get calls from prospective shows asking if Las Vegas is safe. There's a way that we can work towards that. And I believe that is for folks to get accurate information regarding the vaccines. We certainly have seen that where there's a higher level of vaccination, there's a lower level of hospitalizations and deaths. And unfortunately, right now, Clark County is in the substantial spread category, which is why we're all back to the masks. So again, please get some accurate information regarding the vaccines that are readily available. Our fire department has been putting forth their usual great effort in making the vaccines available for free, different locations around town. They'll also be working with the schools. This is an opportunity to get this taken care of. Again, I also want to welcome Mr. Tedder. Having all of this with new council members, new city manager, it's going to be difficult. I'm sure there'll be some ups and downs, but I really look forward to an upward trajectory on all of this. So welcome aboard. And Mr. Mays, you've been an enormous help to me over the past 10 months. The work you've done has just been outstanding. I know I'm certainly better off for it, and I think our community is as well. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.